of Hi guys, I'm Amy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a reading wrap up for all of you. Some of these books I read like back in May, so it's been just a few months since I finished reading them, and I will do my best to let you know what I thought of them and my experience reading them, but they may not be as comprehensive of a review as I typically like to do. But if you are interested in hearing about some of the books that I've read since May, then go ahead and keep on watching. I will be talking about more books than I usually talk up in a typical reading wrap up. Usually I average about 5, but there are some books that I've read that have been in a series, or other books that I've actually reviewed already, and some that I just don't have a whole lot to say about. So we have more books than normal, but nonetheless, let's get to them. So I had read Soulless by Gail Carriger a few months back, I think. I don't know. Sometime this year. And I decided to pick up the second in the series, which is Changeless. This is, of course, book 2 of the Parasol Protectorate series or novels. And this just continues along with Alexa Terabodia's story, and I also read the third book in the series, which is Blameless. I'm not going to tell you what these books are about because they're series, but I will say that I enjoyed Changeless less than I enjoyed Soulless, but the third one picked it up for me. I enjoyed that one quite a bit more than I did the second one, but we'll go ahead and leave it at that. The only nonfiction book of the bunch I have is Rereadings, 17 Writers Revisit Books They Love, edited by Anne Fadiman. So that's exactly what this book is. Each of these authors talk about rereading a book or a particular piece of literature or art multiple times over or for a second time. And I have to say, overall, I really, really enjoyed these essays. I think this is a book that is a celebration from one reader to another, and there's just things that they talk about in these essays that have a lot to do with what it means to love reading. And just taking a peek back at my notes, and one in particular that I wanted to point out is little moments that only a reader would know, let alone recognize. All the essays touch on this in one form or another, and it's just really enjoyable. Just those little nuggets of information that you as a reader just are like, I totally get that, or I really appreciate that. It can get a little highbrow at times with a few of the authors. I didn't love all of the essays equally, who would, but I would definitely recommend it if this sounds like something that you're interested in reading. Now for the book that I already reviewed on my channel, and I will link that video up here for you guys if you want to hear me talk about it in more depth, but that was The Thoughts and Happenings of Wilfred Price, Purveyor of Superior Funerals by Wendy Jones. And this is a story about Wilfred Price and what happens when he, on a whim, proposes to a woman that he doesn't love and how he deals with the repercussions of that, and the fact that he meets another woman who he does very much care about. I was so caught off guard by this book. Spoiler alert for my review if you want to go check out more of my in-depth thoughts about it, but I loved it. Absolutely adored this book. I read this for the Indie Press Project, with Europa being that publisher for the month, and I highly recommend this book. And I mentioned in that video, I was like, I need more books by this author. There's actually a second book in this series, which I have already acquired. Not yet read, but will be. But definitely recommend. This is a little gem of a book. Some of you may or may not know that lately I have been trying to pick up books that are a little bit lighter in content and reading experience, so I decided to pick up The Proposal by Jasmine Guillory. Jasmine Guillory, of course, is the author of The Wedding Date, which was a contemporary romance novel that did very, very well. And this book follows Carlos, who we meet in the first book, and is her name Nicole? Yes, Nicole. And this is about their relationship and what happens when Nicole's very short-lived, what do I mean by short-lived? Boyfriend that she hasn't been with for very long proposes to her very publicly at a Dodgers game, and what happens when she says no. And I thoroughly enjoyed this. I definitely liked it better than The Wedding Date, and would recommend as far as contemporary romances go. Without a doubt, the most intense book of this bunch, I have The Book of Essie by Mclean Weir. This book was everywhere several years ago on BookTube, and for good reason. I really, really enjoyed this book. I think it was very well written. This is the story of Essie. She's 16 and she finds herself pregnant. And what's really interesting about this is Essie has grown up on television as a part of this reality TV show all about her family, her father being this very, very well-respected, loved pastor slash preacher. And so she's grown up in the spotlight, and this is the story of how the show and her family and herself decide to deal with Essie's pregnancy. And this book just gave me a lot to think about and dissect and sit with, and I would definitely recommend it. It's very well written. The characters are interesting. There's one aspect of it that I think you have to suspend belief for a little while, but if you can get past that, I think it's worth it. Trigger warnings are in effect for this book. I will link them down below, but I don't want to mention them here because they are a bit of a spoiler. But if you're looking for something that really dives deep into the meaning of family and faith and social media and the impacts of television and the facade of who you should and shouldn't be, I definitely recommend this book. It is absolutely worth your time. I also purchased two, I don't think, they're not novels necessarily. One is a memoir. It's a graphic memoir, I would say, and the other is just a compilation of this particular artist's work and cartoons, and I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with her. It's Debbie Tongue. So the memoir is Quiet Girl in a Noisy World, an introvert story, and then the other book of hers that I read is Book Love. And in Quiet Girl in a Noisy World, this is just Debbie Tongue going into what it means to be an introvert and how she figured out that she was introverted and how that affected her life and how she dealt with things like anxiety, etc., etc. It's all in black and white, and I absolutely love her art style. I first found her on Pinterest, I believe, but I really appreciated the fact that her boyfriend is extroverted, which is a very similar situation to Erin and I. Erin being a very extroverted person and me being very introverted. I highly recommend this if you're a reader or an introvert or all of the above. I think you'll really, really enjoy that. And then Book Love is just kind of, like I said, a compilation of different moments of a reader's life, and it's just about the celebration of reading and buying books and talking about books and reading books, and I thoroughly enjoyed both of these and highly recommend if you are a reader, and I'm assuming you are because you're watching my channel. So just do yourself a favor. If you want a really fun afternoon reading some very relatable comics, then definitely check out Debbie Tongue. The fun books continue. I actually started this next book as an audiobook. I have been listening to audiobooks when I occasionally mow the lawn, but I tend to search for audiobooks that I don't feel are going to be like a heavy topic or a more intense book, kind of like the Book of Essie. I don't think I ever would have listened to that on audio. So audiobooks which, let's be fair, I rarely listen to. If I do listen to them, they're going to be a lighter, easier read for me. So I decided to pick up The School for Good and Evil by Soman Chanani. And this is the story about two best friends, Sophie and Agatha, and they are the polar opposites of each other. Sophie is blonde and beautiful and everyone loves her, and she is just obsessed with the idea of being a princess. And then we have Agatha, who nobody likes. She's very witchy. She's a bit ostracized in their town, but in their town, every 4 years, there are two children that go missing. One is always good and one is always evil, and they're taken away to this School for Good and Evil, this fairy tale school, and that year Sophie and Agatha are taken, but they end up at the opposite schools that they would have guessed. So Sophie ends up at the School for Evil and Agatha ends up at the School for Good. And that's just this story, and it's about their friendship, and this book totally caught me by surprise. I actually really freaking liked it. It took me a little while to get into it, but it was just a lot of fun, and I'm really hopeful that as I continue the series, the characters mature alongside Sophie and Agatha. I think they're 12 when this book starts, and there's 7 books in the series. But if you want something with fun and whimsy and nods to fairy tales and that type of thing, I would recommend this. And I really did enjoy the audiobook as well. I didn't listen to the whole book on audio. I also read some of it in the physical form, but definitely worth checking out if you're looking for something fun and a little bit more lighthearted. The last book I'm going to chat with you about is a book that I've heard several people talk about before, but not in a huge amount of detail, but it always sounded interesting to me, and the people that I did hear about it from did recommend it. And that is A Winter's Promise, which is book 1 of the Mirror Visitor series by Christelle Davos, and this is translated from the French by Hildegard Serrel. And our main character in this story is Ophelia. And Ophelia is a very quiet, mousy girl who is living in this like post-apocalyptic Earth situation in which the Earth has been like split into these floating islands. And she's from the island of Anima, where everyone has these special abilities that have to do with animating objects. But Ophelia's specific ability is that she can read objects. So if she touches an object, she learns of everything that happened to that object and the emotions the person had when they were interacting with it, etc., etc. And she is betrothed to a mystery man from the pole, which is this far removed arc from theirs that's very cold and isolated and very few people know about. And she is sent off to be married to him. And this is Ophelia's story. I so enjoyed this book. This is a slow burn of a book. Yes, it's a fantasy book, but it's far more focused on like the political aspect of things between these two arcs at the pole, etc. And this book genuinely floored me. I thought I was going to enjoy it, but if you're looking for an action-packed, fast-paced type of YA fantasy read, this is not it. But if you would like something a little bit quieter and more of a deep dive into the psyche and the politics that can come from being at a court in which people are vying for power and that type of thing, this is very, very interesting. I actually enjoyed it so much that I am now reading it out loud to Aaron because I knew that he would really get a kick out of the political machinations that happen within this book. So that's what we're doing at the moment. I had started the second one, but I think I'm going to hold off and we'll read it together. But it's also awesome that it is translated, and the third book in the series, for the translation at least, will be coming out in early September. So maybe a good one to jump on board with. I definitely recommend. All right, there we have it. A little rough around the edges, but we got through it. Let me know if you guys have read any of these books and what your thoughts were on them, or if you want to read them now. You guys know the drill. Did you like them? Did you not like them? Are you super excited to read them now? Let me know all the things, and I promise I will brush up my reviewing skills because they are a little bit rusty at the moment. But if you guys like this video, go ahead and give a like, and if you loved it, please subscribe, and we will see you in my next video. Happy reading! Edited. Chatting about the air literally just turned on, so give me one moment.